All right, I did go ahead and click record, so we are recording now. I'm Holly Schreiner. I'm Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions at the University of Kansas, and I'm just here to say hello and thank you for participating. We hope that you've been able to take advantage of some of the Explorer Graduate School Week presentations. If you have any additional questions about the University of Kansas after the week has concluded, please let us know. But now I will pass it off to my colleague, Madison Orange from Financial Aid and Scholarships here at the university, who will talk to y'all. I will monitor the chat and Madison will give the presentation. So thank you very much.
Awesome. So like Holly said, my name is Madison. And so today we're going to go over kind of funding options for a graduate school. And I believe my screen is sharing, correct? Okay. So today we're going to go over topics. It's going to let me click. Sorry, but okay. So today we're going to go over topics to consider, such as like understanding the costs that goes into graduate school, of what it's like to file the FAFSA or the ISNA based off of if you're a U.S. citizen or a international student. And then we're also going to talk about different types of aid that's available to everyone and other funding options that students can look into. So the first thing that we like to talk about is how to calculate your costs. So it's definitely very important to understand the cost of your education. So we do provide a tool that is going to allow you to type in things like what your program is. Sorry about that. But we're going to talk about things like what your program is, how many hours you'll be in, if you're an in-state or out-of-state student, if you're an international student, things like that, to kind of get a better idea of what those costs are going to look like for you each semester and each year. And then in those estimated costs is going to be things like tuition and fees that are going to be applied directly to KU. It'll also talk about estimates of room and board. So if you live on campus, that would also be another thing that would be charged to you through KU, but it's also going to be included in your estimated costs, even if you aren't living on campus, just so you're able to take out aid to help with that. It's also going to give you estimates of books and supplies and personal and transportation expenses. And obviously some of those things are still going to be things that you would be personally paying for, but you are able to take out aid to help with those. And all of those estimates of costs are going to be what we call the cost of attendance or the budget. And so this is going to be an assigned budget based off of those estimates. This can always be updated if you have increased costs, if your tuition is more than what's budgeted, if your housing is more than what's budgeted, or if you have to take out additional, if you have to have any additional additional resources for your education, or if you have any medical expenses that come up that you are needing additional assistance for, you can definitely request a budget adjustment to increase that to allow you to be able to take out more additional aid. And so in terms of being able to apply for aid, there are two different options. One is going to be filing the FAFSA. So this is going to be typically for US citizens or eligible non-citizens. This is going to allow you to receive federal financial aid. And so if you're going to be starting in the fall of 2022 or anytime after that, you'd be filing the 2022-2023 FAFSA at FAFSA.gov. You do have to apply each year if you're going to be wanting to take out financial aid each year. If you're going to be starting in the spring, in the summer of 2022, you'd also want to complete that 2021-2022 FAFSA. Through the FAFSA, it does require that you create an FSA username and ID. This is going to be what you're going to be using to fill out the FAFSA each year, complete required to-do list items, and be able to see the status of what your loans are looking like. If you've taken out loans in undergraduate, you've probably already made an FSA username and ID, so you'll still use that same login information. Within the FAFSA, it's going to also require tax information. So for next year's FAFSA, you're going to need 2020 tax information, as well as any financial and asset information in your Social Security numbers. And so since you're going to be graduate students, you'd be considered independent students. So it'd only be your information and your spouse's information if you are married. And then some tips that we recommend is applying early and each year. It does become available on October 1st. So the faster you get it done, the faster that it'll be processed, which means once we start packaging you for aid for the next academic year, you'll be able to be one of the first students to receive that information. We also recommend that you enter your name and your social security number exactly as they appear on your social security card, because they're going to be checking with the Social Security Administration to make sure that everything is correct. And if there's any mistakes, you'll have to go back in and update everything. And then there is a data retrieval tool that allows you to link your tax information directly to your FAFSA so that you don't have to pull out your 1040 and manually import that information. And then also make sure that you're watching for any alerts or any messages that come up while you're completing it, just to make sure that you're on the right track and being able to complete all the necessary requirements. And then for international students, we have what's called the ISNA. This is going to be the Institutional Student Needs Analysis Worksheet. This will make you eligible sometimes for what our KU International Student Tuition Grant. There's also some scholarships that you might be applying for that require you to have information about your financial need. And so by filing this, you'll be able to have that information to be able to complete those applications. So it is available on our financial aid website in the forms section for students who are going to be coming for next academic year. There's a 2022-2023 is not available. And you'll also have to file this each year. And we do have a March 1st priority deadline for some of the grants that the filing this can make you eligible for, but you are able to complete it afterwards. And for the ISNA, since it's going to be a form that you'll complete on the KU website, all you'll need is your KU online ID and password. You'll also need your 2020 tax information. If it's international tax information, you'll just need to you'll need to kind of make it more, you'll have to bring it to US currency. Information like that will need to be put on there. You'll also need financial and asset information as well. And you'll input all of that online in that form. And then, so the next thing we're going to talk about today is graduate financial aid at KU. So this is going to be things like grants and scholarships, GTA, GRA and GA positions, federal work study, and student loans. So for grants and scholarships, typically for graduate students, departments are going to be determining that eligibility through your admissions application or through a separate application. If they have funding available to award, make sure that you're reaching out to your department to make sure that you have all that information about that. Through our office, we don't have any scholarships available to graduate students, so it will be coming directly from the department or the graduate school. Sometimes those scholarships are going to require that you file the FAFSA or the ISNA, so make sure that you are reading those requirements and making sure that you filled out those applications if you are going to be looking at those scholarships. And then if you've received a scholarship through your department, financial aid will be notified, and then it'll be added to your financial aid overview to be able to see what that looks like compared to any other types of aid that you've been accepting. There is also a childcare grant that's available. It usually becomes available starting in September 1st, and it'll be at the KU scholarships portal, which is going to be ku.academicworks.com. The award amounts are going to vary from each year, but the criteria typically stays the same, so that it requires you're enrolled in at least 6 hours and you have an expected family contribution of $13,000 or less. And that's going to be something that is going to require you to file the FAFSA to be able to know that information. You also have to have a child younger than 5 who's not in kindergarten, and proof that you pay for childcare expenses. And that application will then be sent on to determine your eligibility, and it'll be added to your financial aid overview if you are eligible. And then, like I mentioned previously, there is a KU International Student Tuition Grant. It is going to be a need-based program for international students who've completed their first full year of academic work at KU. So once you are past your first year, if you have a program that's for more than 1 year, you're eligible to apply for this. Or if you're an undergraduate student coming into a graduate program at KU, then you can also apply for this. And the application is just going to be it's completing the institutional needs analysis worksheet by March 1st for consideration. We also continue to look at other applications when they come in if there's additional funding available. And it does require that you have an F1 or J1 international student, and you are in a degree program and enrolled in a minimum of 6 hours during each semester. And then for other scholarship opportunities, we typically recommend looking at the KU scholarships portal, which I mentioned previously, so that ku.academicworks.com. Sometimes departments and offices are going to be posting their scholarships there. Sometimes there's also additional grants that are available that graduate students could apply for, and those will all be listed on there. And then also sometimes the graduate school has funding listed on their website, so that's available there. And then we do recommend 2 scholarship search engines. that provide you with outside scholarship opportunities, and that'd be fastweb.com and collegeboard.org. And all of those or any other outside scholarships that you are able to find on your own, might that be through a tribe that you're associated with, a organization, or a company that you're associated with, those can all be applied to your tuition at KU. And then the next type of funding opportunities is usually going to be a GTA, GRA, or GA position. And this would be something that's going to be administered by your individual graduate programs. And so you'd want to make sure that you're asking your graduate programs about these. If there's any opportunities, you can also scan the employment website through KU to look for additional listings. And the next thing in that is that GRAs and GTAs are eligible to have some or a portion, all or some of their tuition paid. It does include differential tuition as it's assessed. So you'll want to make sure when you're looking at those options that you're kind of determining if and what they are able to fund through those positions. And then through GTA and GRA positions, and GA positions, there's going to be discounts and waivers that can be applied to your tuition based off of your actual position and the bill that you have. So for me, when I was a graduate student at KU, I was a GA and I was an out-of-state student. And by being a GA, the waiver that they gave me was to have in-state tuition. So that is kind of like that's kind of an example of what those positions could do to your tuition bill. And the amount is also going to be affected by your position. So just make sure that you're communicating with your department and making sure that all those benefits are understood and how that'll be affected. And then you can also come to our office to see what that would, once you have more information of how that would affect your financial aid or your tuition bill. Another type of funding source is federal work study. So this one also requires that you file the FAFSA and have financial need. It is going to require that you have an on-campus position or there are also some select community service off-campus positions that are eligible for federal work study. So this is going to be a form of aid that you'll receive as you work. So it'd be something that you get in a paycheck. It wouldn't be something that's applied directly to your charges. And you can take what you make to go and pay your tuition balances, but this is typically going to be coming from a paycheck. And then we're going to go into some loan options for graduate students. We're going to talk about some federal loan options as well as some outside loan options. So for federal options, students who file the FAFSA are eligible for up to $20,500 per year in an unsubsidized direct loan. Graduate students can only borrow an aggregate limit of $138,500. That's also going to include any loans you took out as an undergraduate student. So just keep that in mind. Once you start reaching those limits, we'll definitely notify you and let you know what you're eligible for. But that is going to be that lifetime limit. These loans currently have a 5.2% interest rate, and that sometimes does differ from year to year, but once you accept the loan, it'll be a fixed interest rate for that specific loan. And you must, like I said, file the FAFSA to receive this. And if you're a first-time federal student loan borrower, you'll also need to complete loan entrance counseling, and you'll typically also need to complete master promissory notes each year, just to continue to confirm that you're going to be repaying the loans that you're taking out. In order to have a federal loan, you do need to be enrolled at least half-time, which means 5 or more hours, and there isn't going to be any repayment required until 6 months after you graduate, or drop below half-time for consecutive 6 months. Once that grace period is up, you do go into repayment. So keep that in mind if you're ever going to be enrolled in 5 or less hours consistently throughout your program and you've taken out student loans in the past. Another option for graduate students is the Graduate Plus Direct Loan. This is going to be, again, another federal loan, so only eligible for U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens who can file the FAFSA. You are able to borrow up to the cost of attendance minus any of your other aid. So like I mentioned previously, the cost of attendance is going to be things like tuition, room and board, personal expenses, transportation expenses, books and supplies, anything that goes into your education costs each year. The interest rates on these is a 6.28%. And so just like the unsubsidized loan, it's going to be fixed once you accept the loan, but they could change from year to year based off of the different loans that you apply for. So you have to also complete an additional application at studentaid.gov that will go through a credit check. There is entrance counseling and a master promissory note that has to be completed for these as well. And you do need to still be enrolled at least half time. Other loan options outside of federal options is the KU Endowment office on campus has a loan program available to graduate students. They have some options available to U.S. citizen graduate students and international graduate students. Most of them is going to be about $6,000 per year for graduate students with a $12,000 aggregate limit. For international students, they do only provide short-term loans through the KU Endowment program in the amount of $1,500. All of these loans are going to have a 5% interest rate with a 2% origination fee. They typically do require that you have a cosigner unless you yourself make $25,000 or more annually. To get more information about that or apply for those, it'll be directly through the KU Endowment office, and they'll have their contact information at that kuendowment.org. And you'll be able to find more information about their student loan program. And then outside of that, there's going to be private loan options. So obviously it's all going to vary based off of the lender that you choose and the credit check that you go through. These don't require that you file the FAFSA. There are some options that don't even require a certain amount of enrollment. And there are some options that are available to international students. So we do have a list of lenders that work with KU students currently, but there are also many more out there that you are able to look into. The interest rates and the repayment options are all going to vary based off of that lender. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for those. And you're able to borrow up to your cost of attendance. So as much as that cost of attendance is, or with the budget adjustment is increased to, is what you're able to apply for in those types of loans. And then to give you a better timeline for aid opportunities and when things disperse, aid will typically disperse 10 days before the semester begins. So if you are starting in the fall, it'll be 10 days before those courses start. If you're starting in the second half of the fall, it'll be 10 days before that second half of the semester starts. And then everything will apply directly to your KU bill first, and any excess funds that would be refunded to you. So if you accepted more than what's needed to your bill, you'll receive it as a refund check. You also have the ability to sign up for direct deposit so that it's not coming through the mail. Refunds are typically available a few days before classes. It'll be a couple days after the aid disperses to your account that it'll be processed as a refund. And like I said, direct deposit will allow you to have that a little bit sooner. So we typically recommend that students sign up for that. Now, some important things to consider is that halftime enrollment is going to be required for most of the federal aid that we talked about. So 5 or more hours for graduate students. Now, graduate students also must maintain a 3.0 cumulative GPA and complete at least 67% of their classes in order to continue to be eligible for federal loan options. So make sure you also keep that in mind if you ever have to drop a class or for any reason have any issues within your courses. And then you will need to file the FAFSA each year to be eligible for federal aid, and the is not each year if you are wanting to continue to pursue a scholarship or the international student tuition grant that requires it on file. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing. So that
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, I think. So if folks do have questions, they are able to answer those, but I'll go ahead and stop the recording for this.